Okay.
All right, I've started the recording and we are going to get going here. Make sure everybody's in. All right, can everybody see the screen okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know why I came back up now. There we go. All right, so like I said, we're going to talk about cancer awareness and prevention in the fire service. And we hope this is going to work. So cancer in the fire service is actually not as new maybe as we think it is. The first link between the products of combustion and cancer actually happened in 1775. And over the past 200 years, scientists have really worked and recently been able to validate this link between the products of combustion and cancer. And in doing so, what they found was that even though firefighters are actually in better shape than the general population, they have a much higher risk of cancer. In fact, 60% of career firefighters will most likely die as a result of cancer. And that's people that serve, their time and retire. Or, their 20 years. More people in. And since 2005, half or more of firefighter deaths, either people who are still working or who are retired, has been directly related to cancer. And the Fire Service Occupational Cancer Alliance, which is made up of the IAFC, the National Volunteer Fire Council, the International Association of Firefighters, all the big groups. In a big report they did, they declared that cancer is a leading cause of firefighter deaths in the United States. And I would say, based on the newer data and things, it probably is the leading cause of firefighter deaths. Typically that's considered to be heart disease and heart attacks. But cancer is not always reported the same way as those type of line of duty deaths. So we're going to hope. So here's a graph. This comes from the Cancer Alliance, and this shows some of that new research and the startling trend that's really starting to impact the fire service. You can see probably from 1950 to about 1990, there really isn't a lot of cancer reported deaths in the United States among firefighters. And some of that is underreporting, but we're going to talk about why suddenly in 1990 and then in the past 20 years you see this this spike in cancer related deaths among firefighters. And you can see now through like 2014, this gray bar is all types of other reasons firefighters have died. The red bar is cancer. So cancer is beating all the other reasons together. So how does cancer impact the fire service? We're hoping this is going to play, but it probably is not going to. Well, this worked earlier. All right, we'll come back to that video. I'll play it at the end. So why are we seeing that spike? Why is there a problem suddenly that has led to this increase of cancer, especially if for 200 years we knew that certain products of combustion cause cancer? The real big reason is changing fire environment. And we talk about this all the time with lightweight construction, new types of furniture and things in terms of fire load, in terms of flashover and ignition points and stuff. But what we don't talk about a lot is that kind of stuff, because it is petroleum based, um, and what it's all made out of, has led to a tenfold increase in the amount of toxic gases that are released in a fire. So that's the main reason for um, that spike in cancer related deaths and cancer related cases among firefighters. And what that kind of stuff does, it actually absorbs through your skin. Um, and what they found, that as the temperature rises by 5 degrees, there's a 400% increase in the amount of stuff your skin absorbs from the outside. Okay, so this picture here, I really like this because this is a test that they did using UV light to show what the firefighters had absorbed inside the fire. So this guy on the right, he this is after the fire, after he had his gear on, and you can see, like, around his neck, on his face, on his hands, and his legs, even, the amount of stuff that was found on his skin. And that's what this UV is picking up, is those toxic particulates that are emitted by the fire. And even though that's with full gear on, that they check to make sure it was on properly. So you can tell with that, um, compared to maybe not having your gear on properly, or not all of your gear, the amount of absorption that you might end up with. And what's happening is the fire is producing particulates that have these toxic gases and stuff in them. And that's really almost microscopic stuff that is able to pass through your gear and things and get on you. And then when that temperature goes up and your temperature goes up, you're absorbing it into your body. And what happens then, that um, reacts basically with your body, and over time, and we sometimes don't know how long. It could be, a year, or it could be 50 years. Those particulates can start to form cancer inside your body. Um, and what they've also found, in terms of these particulates, it's not only, while the majority of it is absorption, um, and that should say SCBA, not SCVA. The other big cause is during overhaul. When SCBA use is less common, um, we're absorbing that stuff through our respiratory tract, which is actually more dangerous than absorbing it through the skin, because it comes into the body easier and with less resistance. So what's happening is we're being exposed to all that stuff because we have this tendency to take our air packs off during overhaul, and then that gets in our body and impacts us. So through the absorption, as you can see there with the UV light, and then through the respiratory tract, it's not only the dangers of the immediate dangers of the smoke, but the long lasting impacts that come from breathing in smoke during overhaul. And these are some of the cancer causing chemicals that are released during a fire. And this is just some of them. I mean, the reality is we're not even really sure what all is released that can cause cancer. Um, some research indicates there could be hundreds of things that are released from a fire, depending on what's in this building, that could cause cancer. But these are some of the most prominent. And the one thing I want to note here, you see, there's a whole lot on this list. Um, there's a whole lot more than our 4-gas meter is going to pick up. Okay. So the argument that your 4-gas meter, if it's reading okay, that it's keeping you safe from particulates and carcinogens, that's not true, because our gas meter doesn't pick up all the things that are released from a fire. And this is just to give you an idea of what may come out at you. All right. So does anybody have any questions about, what the kind of the problem is, or what, like why this is happening? All right. So if all this is happening, I'm sharing this with you not to make you afraid, but to make you aware of just what's going on and what we're facing. And this carcinogen research is, because we have newer stuff that's being released, is still relatively new enough that we don't have all the answers for prevention. I would like to say maybe in 20 years, we'll have a good handle on how to prevent cancer and how to deal with cancer in the fire service. Maybe like we've been able to do with other things. But right now, it's still new enough that we don't have all of the solutions. But we do have some best practices that we can do that we know will help reduce the risk to us of contracting cancer, of getting those particulates on our body. And the ones I'm going to talk about come from what's called this lavender ribbon report. This was done in conjunction with the IFC, National Volunteer Fire Council, and a whole bunch of different groups that work together to say, okay, now we have this research. What do we need to do to prevent cancer among firefighters? And while I'm going to talk about these 11 best practices, I'm also going to weave in our SOG, which references carcinogen exposure. Uh, this SOG was written to align with what was then getting ready to come out in the Lavender Report. We actually, ours predates that. But what I'm going to talk about is the best practices from the Lavender Report, and then what our policy says that kind of lines up with that. Okay, so best practice number one. This one is pretty simple. That full protective PPE, including your SCBA, should be worn during the entire incident, including during salvage and overhaul. That is designed to keep those particulates, like I talked about, from entering our respiratory system, but also from absorbing through our skin. Because if we break down our gear, if we loosen the, our coats, or we loosen our pants, that kind of stuff is going to be entering that way, in addition to coming in through our respiratory tract. And just, our policy and the county policy both call for individuals, when we're working during overhaul, to wait until after ventilation has been completely completed before we even think about taking our SCBAs off. And that, in our policy, it says that should take at least 15 minutes. So that's 15 minutes after we've determined that the fire is basically out, that we maybe have some hot spots to deal with, that the structure should be ventilated. And that means things like we're not seeing active smoke, we're not seeing active fire, and things that we may have to deal with. And, one rule of thumb that I always use is, in thinking about should we go in there without our air packs on, if you are not at the point you would be okay with someone from the public going in, then you need to consider, should you be wearing an air pack? Now, I will say not very many departments in this county follow this, and we have some, shall we say, leadership in the county that still believes if the 4 gas meter says it's okay, that it's okay. But the reality is we're still exposing ourselves to all those other things that may be released, still being released during salvage and overhaul, if we go in without our SCBA on. All right. The second thing is best practice number 2 is that a second hood should be provided to all entry certified personnel in the department. Um, we provide one hood to everyone, and then we carry extra hoods in the rigs so that if you go out here on a call and your hood has been contaminated, you can take your hood off, and there are extra hoods in each of the engines and the ladder truck that you can swap out, and there should be an extra one for each seated position. If you find that they're not there, please let me know and we can add them back in. But what that's there for is if you're taking your hood off, you're leaving a fire and you're getting ready to on the way back to the firehouse, or um, you come out of a smoky condition, you can change that hood out um, so that when you run that, so that you're not wearing it all the way back, or you don't have to put that contaminated hood back on in order to go on the next call or something like that. We also have extra hoods at the fire station so that when you come back, they can be switched out there. But there shouldn't be any reason why you should have to put on a hood after a fire to go on another call without it being cleaned. We have plenty of extra ones to wear. All right, best practice number 3, and I think for us, this is really the best thing that we can do to help lessen the risk of cancer. And that is after you exit the IDLH atmosphere, um, conducting a gross decon of the firefighter. Um, Now, there's a lot of different ways that can be done, and some are more effective than others. It can even be done with an exhaust fan um, that blows that stuff off of you. If you stand in front of an exhaust fan for um, several minutes after you come out of the fire, even a minute, that removes a lot of those large particulates off of your gear and reduces your chance of absorption. And actually, the county policy calls for that to set up a fan um, outside that the firefighters can use for that. Um, you know, and then better than the fan is actual gross decon using soap and water and a brush. And we carry um, a decon kit on the apparatus, um, on the wagon, the rescue engine, and the truck that can be used to clean off your gear after you come out of a fire. Now, I know back when we first started discussing this, there was a lot of questions about what is that going to do to your gear? Is that going to hurt you if you have to wear it again after it's been washed off before it dries? And the studies are showing that that doesn't have any impact on like steam production and things and your ability of your gear to keep you safe. It's basically the same as if you get wet inside of a fire, you from a hose line or something. Um, they're not really showing that there's any impact, any um, risk to doing the gross decon, even if you did it every time that you come back out. Now, is that realistic? Probably not. But the big thing is we need to make sure we do it as soon as possible at the call. We need to make sure that we um, get that set up and get it done, especially before we get back in the apparatus, because the the most time you can reduce exposure, the better off you are. Um, and there's no the other option if you don't do that is to put your gear in a plastic bag um, and bring it back with you. And some places do both. Um, the science has kind of shown that washing it off is good enough. And we don't carry extra sets of gear with us on the apparatus. So um, washing it off and wearing it back like that is good enough to keep you from getting um, a lot of those particulates on you without having to worry about bagging it up before you get back on the rigs. And I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, both our policy and the county policy calls for this gross decon as soon as possible on the scene, and especially before you leave. Now, again, the reality is we're probably the only department that's going to worry about it. But the good thing is I've seen that if we do it, a lot of the other people follow suit. So this is a good chance for us to be leaders and basically get that set up and get it started to help some of these other departments, and help keep them safe. After the So best practice number 4, after the completion of gross decon, is wiping off your exposed area. So we're talking your face, your hands, um, part of your arms, where the sleeve of your coat comes down, your neck, because that's where, if you go back to that picture with the UV light, that's where those particulates really grab onto you, because your coat and pants provide some protection, but like things like your hood and your gloves are finding, are not providing a lot of protection. So being able to wipe that off and getting that extra off of you, is going to make a big difference. And we carry wipes in all the rigs that are the non-alcohol wipes, because those are the ones that aren't going to open up your pores and put all that stuff further in. So it just takes one wipe. It takes a minute. Um, Wipe down anything that was exposed when you took your face piece and gloves and stuff off. That'll make a difference.
No, don't do that.
And one thing I did forget to mention on this not only includes your turnout gear, but also like your air pack, um, and other equipment. So we need to be thinking about that too. Um, Things like your helmet, washing off the outside of your helmet, washing off your air pack and stuff, because it's not going to do you any good if you wash off your gear and not your air pack or not your helmet and put it in the rig or put it back on. Best practice number 5, is as soon as you can when you get back, to wash the clothes that you had on, because again, what's happening is that's absorbing through your turnout gear onto the next layer you've got under there, which is your clothes. And actually, your street clothes provide some extra protection. So by having that on and then taking off as soon as you can, you're preventing that stuff from getting on you. Now, when you wash that stuff, you want to be sure to wash anything that you wore inside of a fire or a vehicle fire or something, um, by itself, and you need to wash it with hot water, um, because if they've actually found that if you wash it in the washing machine with other things, then those particulates transfer over to the other things that are in there. But washing it by itself and washing with hot water eliminates the vast majority of that. Let Wayne in here. And then number 6 ties into that. Not only when you get home should you, um, wash your clothes, but you need to wash yourself as soon as possible. You need to take a shower, a hot shower. Um, the hotter the better, because that opens up your pores and releases that stuff back out and washes it off. And I know if we come back from a call at 3 o'clock in the morning and you've been up all night, taking that extra half an hour or so to wash your clothes and take a shower and things seems like a lot to ask. But the one thing is, you don't want to bring that into your family. You don't want to expose your family to the particulates you bring back inside with you. So this is actually one of the best things that you can do, is simply taking a shower and washing your clothes outside of the firehouse, because you don't want to have that stuff lingering in your house, and you don't want to have that stuff lingering on you. And one thing to add to that, they don't actually mention that in these 11, but our policy talks about it, is within 24 hours after the fire, doing some type of exercise or something that causes you to sweat, that is going to open up the deeper part of your pores and release that stuff that gets trapped down in there. And I will just share that, when I was in college and stuff, a lot of times you know, if I would be home on the weekends, I would go back and would be working out Monday morning and would start to smell like smoke from a fire we maybe ran over that weekend. So that stuff will really get in you and stay in your pores for a long time. It can, you know, you're talking a couple days even after you take a shower. So being able to work out or do something that, you know, new firehouses are even putting saunas in them to help get that stuff out. Um, so that's something we need to be thinking about. Best practice number 7, and this is something I think we're really good at, is not bringing your PPE in a public area, in a living area. That includes like the radio room, the lounge, the meeting room, um, basically any place that's not the uh, apparatus space. And never take it inside your house. So like, and we don't do this, but some places that still take it home. Um, you should never take it inside your house or even like in the trunk of your car, stuff like that, especially if it's been exposed. Because if you do that, you're again taking that back to your family and you're trapping it in an area um, that it's not going to be able to get out. It's only going to be able to get in like your car into where you're sitting and stuff. So you need to be thinking about that. And that's one thing we're really good about. Best practice number 8 is cleaning when you get back the apparatus seats, the SCBA, and basically all your interior areas. Um, and that basically means just wiping it down. Um, you know, you can use the wipes. You can use, you know, we have cleaner um, that wipes some of that stuff off of it. If you scrub your SCBA really good with soap and water, that'll do it. But basically, you're touching it. You're trying to clean anything that we might have transferred one of those particulates from us onto them, onto the surfaces, onto the apparatus, so that then the next person that gets on there isn't then touching that same service and transferring it onto them. Number 9 is getting an annual physical. Now, I know we don't provide annual physicals to everyone except for ladder truck drivers. Um, I wish we could. Um, but one thing that I will say is, and this is a benefit to all of us, is that the way the healthcare law is written right now, if you have insurance, your insurance is required to provide you an annual physical with no copay or deductible every year for free, basically. So I would definitely urge everyone to take advantage of that. You know, if you don't get the fire department physical for the ladder truck, um, make sure that you're taking advantage of your physical, your regular doctor physical. And when you go, talk to them about um, firefighter cancer and things that, and how you maybe need to be screened. And actually, there's a really good resource, and I can send you this link if you want it, that you can give to your doctor um, so that they kind of know what to look for. And I will say that a couple years ago, I went to the doctor for my physical and talked to him about cancer screening. And my doctor said, well, I don't know how being a firefighter can lead to you have cancer. Um, so I sent him this report, and I think it changed his opinion. So make sure not only that you're going, but that you're talking to your doctor about that, they know you're a firefighter, and you know they know that um, firefighter, you know, exposure has been linked to cancer. Number 10, and I know a lot of people um, dip and smoke and stuff, but just realize that tobacco products are going to increase your likelihood of cancer, and then compound that with exposure on the fire scene. You know, it's like a 2 strikes already against you. And also, it's going to be a strike against you if you do get cancer trying to go to workman's comp, because the way the workman's comp law is written, if they can show that there's a good likelihood you got cancer from something else, they're not going to cover it. So just keep that in mind that that may impact you twice if you use tobacco products. And then number 11, documenting all of your exposures, fire exposures and chemical exposures on incident reports and on personal exposure reports. Um, what this is really beneficial for is if you get cancer, you have to have this information in order to file workman's comp. Now, workman's comp is notoriously bad for coverage. However, they recently changed the law in Virginia. So now there is the assumption um, that firefighters will get cancer written into the workman's comp law. So that makes it easier if you get certain types of cancer to get workman's comp coverage. You don't have to prove that it wasn't something else now. Now, you still have to have documentation that you were exposed, because if you don't have any documentation at all that you were ever exposed, they're not going to provide you with that coverage. So we have through the county personal exposure reports that anytime you're exposed to products of combustion, you should be completing. And they have to be done individually. I mean, there's no other better way to do it um, based on the county, the way their system is. But basically, those are filled out and put in your personnel file. And then, God forbid anybody ever gets cancer, you can take those and give them to workman's comp to show, yes, I was exposed to products of combustion this number of times. Um, I've talked to some people that have had cancer and gone through the workman's comp, and the only ones who ever really get covered are the ones who actually have that documentation that over 10 or 20 years they were exposed multiple times. So I know it can be a pain in the behind to fill those out, and hopefully we never ever have to use them. But that's going to be the one thing that saves you, because not only is cancer bad for you, I mean, it's expensive. I know Chief Creasy from Richmond and Henrico that some of us took cancer classes with. You know, he talked about he had cancer and he was talking about medicine that's $50,000 a month. Um, so if you don't have insurance, that you're not going to be able to stay on that medicine to stay alive very long, which is just unfortunate. All right, before I take any questions, I'm going to try to bring up that video that I wanted to show back at the beginning that didn't work. We're going to hope that it does. This is a really good video from the Fire Association of the State of New York. So here we go. And we're not going to watch this whole thing because this is 13 minutes long. But can everybody hear and see that?
Wayne is the assistant chief for Willowvale Fire Company, and he's been there since 1998. I mean, it's an honor that I can say that my husband is a volunteer firefighter, as much as it can be hard, you know, if we're doing something and then it gets leaves or middle of the night, 3 in the morning, we can do this off, there's a fire, he goes. Wayne's probably one of the nicest people to go for me. He always does for other people. He really cares about people and cares about people think what he does. He would rather help you than probably help himself. He's probably, I don't think he ever knew how good a father he would be, but he's probably the best. Wayne worked nights, so he was tired all the time anyways. So he'd come home, he would sleep during the day, and then he'd be up for a little while, then he would have to take a nap. And he was just more tired than normal. Then he got a cold that just kind of never went away. And so I'm like, okay. So he started to get swollen lymph nodes. So went to the doctors and did antibiotics, antiviral, antifungal. They did everything, and it just never really went away. We went to see the surgeon, sat us down and he said, I hate to tell you this, but your husband has cancer. Wayne has ALL, which is acute lymphoblastic leukemia or lymphoma. I never saw somebody have so much pain. It's awful. So, it's awful. To see somebody in pain that you can't help. Being a wife, being a nurse. When you have a family member diagnosed with cancer, it's not just that person going through it, it's the family going through it. And at the time, it was Wayne and I. So financially, we spent thousands of dollars on COVID. So I can't imagine what people go through that don't have insurance. But it's incredibly expensive. The fire department gave Wayne a purpose. He always says, even when that pager goes off in the middle of the night, and I'm like, are you really going? He'll say, it makes me feel normal. It makes me feel like human, like I'm helping somebody else. I don't go to the fire department and they look at me like I'm a cancer patient. I have purpose. At the moment, Wayne is in remission. As far as we know, I guess you could never truly say there's no cancer cells in you, but the doctors are confident that he's doing well. And we go out to Buffalo for his checkups, and they say, come every 6 months. You're doing great. Let us know if anything changes. As far as the leukemia, all his bone marrows have been clean, and we hope they continue to be clean. Life now is very busy. We have a beautiful boy. He's 8 months old, named Ethan. I'm working part-time. Wayne's working full-time. So life is very busy at the moment, which is good.
Terrifying feeling of leaving Diane and not being around for her was extremely hard. It means the world to you. I mean, you can never repay these people. I can never repay her for the late nights, the screaming, the waking up in the middle of the night, and excruciating pain for reasons we can't figure out because of the medication. The being sick, the not wanting to get out of bed, her having to do all the shoveling around and cleaning the house while I couldn't get out of bed for almost a year. Yeah, I mean, there's no greater feeling to know that you have that support, and there's no way to ever express or show somebody the gratitude you have for it, besides telling them thank you 1,000 times. That can only go so far.
All righty. So stop the share. Does anybody have any questions about any of that? All righty. You have a question, Dennis? Dennis, you're on mute.
Got me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just a comment. It is expensive. I can tell you, my tab's over $3,000 a month for my treatment for cancer. So, and it's been as high as 5,000 in 1 month. But fortunately, I have insurance. So people should pay attention on the subject of cancer.
Yep. Thank you, Dennis. Anybody have anything else they wanted to ask or add or anything? All righty then. I'm going to